The UK hasn't had to cope with unemployment above 10% for long since perms and shoulder pads were in fashion. But joblessness, unlike the outfits, is making a comeback. After the jobs crises in the 80s and 90s, the UK unemployment rate had been on a downward trend for years, falling to multi-decade lows. The OBR in their COVID economic scenario suggested it could jump to 10% in the second quarter of this year. But they also assumed economic recovery would be swift, with about a quarter of the rise reversed by the end of the year. The economy doesn't look set to bounce back. Consumers and businesses are struggling. And we know that 6.3 million jobs are now covered by the government's furlough scheme. The risk is that some of those workers ultimately find themselves laid off, keeping unemployment high. We know that many come from sectors like travel or hospitality that will struggle to get back to work. And we know that they tend to be younger, they're more likely to be women and to be in lower paying roles. For a government elected on a promise of boosting the economy in weaker regions, it presents a different economic problem.
If you have two big objectives, one, do all the things in your manifesto, two, get the job market working again the way it was seemingly working in January, then it's the latter one that's going to be the top priority, absolutely no doubt, because you've got to understand the Treasury reversed its normal economic rules for a couple of months. It stopped trying to pay people to go into work, which is what the welfare system kind of does now, and started paying people not to work. And reversing out of that is an incredibly difficult challenge. Compared to that, these long-term agendas about infrastructure and levelling up and so forth, they'll still be there in the rhetoric. They'll still be there paid attention to because they're in the manifesto. But number one will be making that job market work again like it was before.
The government has repeatedly pledged to do whatever it takes. But that may involve keeping up its active role in the labour market for a much longer period. The furlough scheme will need to be wound down gradually, especially in certain sectors. Then, quick measures to help job seekers and for those past downturns tell us will be hardest hit, like the young. Efforts to avoid what economists call scarring, where the negative effects of high unemployment persist for many years to come.
One of the things we think government could do is look back at the successes and challenges of past job guarantee programs. So things like the Future Jobs Fund, which actually offered a temporary job, but it was a paid job to young people during the financial crisis. It's really important to get people's foot in the door. So get them a job, allow them to build up their skills, allow them to build up their confidence, equally allow them to make some money. And from a government point of view, that's actually why it's really important, because a young person working and developing their skills is a young person who's not on benefits. Equally, it's a young person who probably will be working for far longer and far more consistently than they otherwise would have been.
Despite the prospect of a smaller economy and larger deficits pushing debt higher, the government still has one eye on its longer-term agenda.
Our commitment to infrastructure investment remains undimmed. Coronavirus will not stop our mission to level up, to unite and to unleash the potential of this country.
And infrastructure projects, while not immediate, can help with job creation in the medium term.
This is a traditional call, I think, from economists to say, in periods when the economy is doing badly, infrastructure investment is a good thing. In general, governments have done the reverse, it has to be said. If you look back at 2010, if you look back indeed to the early 1990s, infrastructure investment was cut very, very sharply because it's actually an easy thing to cut if you're looking to balance the books. It's just that it may not be a terribly wise thing to cut.
Since the 1980s, the UK's public spending on infrastructure has been lower than OECD peers. Ramping up that spending, with the public finances for now taking the strain, may be one plan to avoid other unfortunate historical comparisons.